New position, same mattress. What's going on, y'all? This is Markeem, Nightmare Baller One, whatever you want to call me. This one will be short. I only got two things to talk about, so let's jump right into it. First thing I wanted to talk about was Peter David. Peter David died at the age of 68 on May 24th. Um, they said it was another cardiac event. He had a slew of health problems before his untimely passing, but sad in itself from a human aspect. 68. He still had life to give people. You know what I mean? His wife loved him a ton. The fans, like myself, and I'll explain who he is if y'all don't know, touched me in a major way. Also, shaped who I am as a comic book fan, as a human being a little bit, and I'll get into that. So, if y'all don't know, Peter David is a longtime comic book writer. He also did a little bit of TV work. It's kind of funny. I looked it up. He actually helped work on that show Space Cases that used to come on Nickelodeon. Still love that fucking show. I didn't know he had worked on it until I did a little bit of research before I got on here. But I don't even want to talk about his work because I feel like he's one of the only writers that I can think of that never really touched anything that was bad. There's a few in terms of like major superhero writers, right? Because that's what he's known for. He's most famous for his superhero work, and he's like one of the only ones that like doesn't have much bad you can speak of. It's like Kurt Busiek. It's about it. It's not many. It's really not many. And Peter Davis in that short list. I will remember him for him being not afraid to push the envelope with what the established status quo for how certain heroes should be. Think about let's start with his Aquaman. I'm gonna talk about the main event in a second. But let's talk about his Aquaman. Okay. Think about everything you knew about Aquaman as somebody who may not know anything about comics, who just knew how Aquaman was portrayed in pop culture, right? Think about how he was a joke, pretty much. People made fun of his abilities, his powers, his attitude, all that stuff. He was a cornball. He was the laughing stock of the Justice League. Think about those old Super Friend cartoons. Think about how like Family Guy used to joke about Aquaman, and like now think about what they did with Jason Momoa. Do you get what I'm saying? Jason Momoa's take on Aquaman is just a more jokey version of Peter David's Aquaman. It's the same. It's literally the same guy, and that is only possible with the work that Peter David put in with that character. Because Aquaman in the early days of DC Comics, when he was introduced, he was meant to be a major player. He was meant to be, he was one of the founding members of the Justice League. He was meant to be one of the heavy hitters of all of DC Comics. Something happened along the way though, where all of the other members of the Justice League that you think of, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, the Green Lantern, even Martian Manhunter, if you want to be honest, they all evolved as characters. Batman was not, the same campy comic book character that he was in the the 40s and the 50s, and then you even had like the 70s where he changed into more of the detective stuff, and then you had the 80s where he became dark brooding Batman that a lot of people think that's all he is. Superman changed from being a plot device, a MacGuffin pretty much, to a character with emotional depth, a character with a philosophical take. Like when all his best stories are philosophical takes on what does it mean to have power and responsibility. You know what I mean? Those are all the best Superman stories. And they weren't doing that before with Superman. Superman was just, and really Alan Moore and John Byrne changed all that with Superman. But like really, like before, Superman was just superpowered villain comes and it's my job to stop him. That was Superman before. But now, it's like more about who he is, how he views the world, things like that. All the best Superman stories do that. Then, even somebody like Martian Manhunter, who his thing was he's our plucky alien friend. But then the themes of, being pulled away from your home, having lost everything, finding a new family after you lost your entire family. I mean, that's Martian Manhunter, because he had to evolve and he changed and things like that. Aquaman never changed. Aquaman was Silver Age cornball all the way basically until Peter David got a hold of him. Just being honest, up all the way into like genuinely all the way until Peter David got a hold of him. He was cornball, complete another cornball. Peter David was the one that was like, this guy will be Water Thor, which is essentially what he is in the in the DC universe now, Water Thor. You know what I mean? And I think you definitely attribute all of that to Peter David. Peter David brought mature storytelling to Aquaman. Peter David brought pretty much the you know how he is whenever you see him portrayed in like the animated shows where he doesn't trust the surface world, and he's apprehensive about how to treat human beings because human beings don't care about the ocean, stuff like that. The militant Aquaman, a lot of that came from Peter David. In fact, most of it came from Peter David. Playing with the mythos of Atlantis, giving Atlantis pretty much like almost like how Thor is treated. How there's different realms and there's different dimensions and things like that. There's different sections of Atlantis where like or the depths of the ocean in general. Like, you know what I mean? That was Peter David that did a lot of that stuff. Peter David, basically when you think of what Aquaman is to pop culture now, what he is in modern comics, all of it is owed to Peter David. That is his influence on that character. And I think it's only second. I think what he did with Aquaman was more impressive, right? I think that, because he took a bunch of artists with no names and gave them names, and and took a book that like nobody checked for, and then gave it life and made it somewhat popular, and people bought Aquaman, and you know what I mean? Like he did that. He did that because that's just how talented he was. You know what I mean? And that impacted me because I always thought Aquaman was a cornball, and then like reading his Aquaman gave me a new perspective on how he could be portrayed. But the book that influenced me the most, I think it's no surprise to anyone that really knows me that's watching this or listening to this, was the Hulk. Was his Hulk. The idea of Bruce Banner being I get angry, I turn big and green, and I smash stuff. Like, tale as old as time, right? But what if the Hulk was influenced by Bruce Banner's emotional spectrum? What if, however he's feeling, whatever extreme emotion that is, gave you a different Hulk? Peter David did that. Isn't that interesting? Things like Joe Fixit, Peter David. He invented Joe Fixit. Things like Joe Fixit, Peter David. You know what I mean? Future Imperfect, which is one of the greatest, to me, comic book stories of all time, about an alternate future where the Hulk decided to take over everything. Peter David, you know what I mean? Making doing the blend of Dr. Banner and the Hulk, all that together, that was Peter David, you know what I mean? And honestly, that book impacted me at the right time because I almost stopped reading comics until somebody dropped. I don't even remember who it was. I think it was my uncle or something like that. Dropped a bunch of. No, it wasn't my uncle. Who was that? Somebody gave me pretty much a bunch of single issues of that run, and that's why you have the man sitting in front of you today. You know what I mean? The guy who could shoot the shit with my guy like Josh about comic books and things like that, who didn't stop reading, is because of Peter David. I met Peter David one time at DragonCon. And this is when Young Justice was on the air. And I just remember him, because he worked on that show too. I just remember talking to him and, like, hey man, how does it feel to like, be in that room and like consulting and helping them with that show? And he was like, I mean, I did a couple episodes. I tossed around some ideas, but I appreciate that you see it that way. And I was like, well, just the way they tell stories, the way they use, the cliffhangers in those episodes to misdirect how you experience the entire story. I was like, that was your writing. And then he was just like, it was just me, and it was this guy I didn't even know that was basically just telling him like how we felt about the show. The fact that that style is what it is. Somebody like Greg Weisman, who worked on who's the showrunner for Young Justice and Gargoyles. You know what I mean? That is the same style that he used in his comics. You know what I mean? And he was just like, man, you guys really pay attention. I just remember how like cool he was, and like, cause he didn't have to do that. He talked to us for like hours, like me and this guy I didn't know, for like hours, just shooting the shit. That was also the same Dragon Con that Neil Adams was tearing motherfuckers up at fucking Injustice, which was amazing. It was crazy. His Green Lantern was nuts, but yeah, that was it was incredible. Neil Adams, if you don't know, long time Batman author. I mean Batman illustrator. You know, pretty much the '70s Batman. When you think of the way that Batman looked, that's Neil Adams. And like he was just out there just tearing motherfuckers up at Injustice. He was also beating motherfuckers in Mortal Kombat. So Mortal Kombat 10 for a little bit. But yeah, man, it's just I just remember how kind he was to me. You know what I mean? And just how the way his books had an impact on me, in that way. Also, the way he had an impact on superhero comics in general, because as I said, he was somebody who wasn't afraid to take what we know about characters, right? What we know about them, and kind of twist them completely, right? And it's a double-edged sword, because he was the first guy, at least to my knowledge, that was comfortable doing that. And as a result, people are more and more comfortable doing that. And it's kind of turned into, man, it could be awesome or it could be terrible, right? It's almost like it's almost like when you when you see like a basketball player, right, try and do the James Harden stuff. Yeah, like try what I'm saying, try and do the James Harden step back and all that stuff. You can do it, but you're not James Harden. You know what I mean? Well, I'm talking prime, but remember it was like an epidemic where everybody was playing like James Harden. You know what I mean? But you can do that, but you're not James Harden. And it was almost like a lot of writers, even today, like, you can do that, but you're not Peter David. You know what I mean? You can do that all you want to, but you're not Peter David. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, R.I.P. One of my favorite writers of all time. As I said, his Hulk run, I could talk about it all day, and I won't do it here. But I believe I reviewed Future Imperfect on my previous channel. I think, or maybe on this channel. I don't know, but I reviewed Future Imperfect. I did. And yeah, man, it's one of the greatest comic book stories of all time. And, he was a great dude. Everyone, was upset how the industry treated him, because by the time he passed, even before that, he had a bunch of health problems, and, the industry, a lot of the main writers and things like that, they tried to band together to get him some help. Some healthcare, because like it's comic book writers, man, they don't get paid like you think, even though they should. Yeah, I mean, it's the nature of the game, but they don't get paid like you think. So, it's just, he's a sad tale, man, and R.I.P. to Peter David. All right, so best of Super Juniors. I'm gonna keep this short. I watched about 70% of the tournament, 70, probably less. I don't know. It was a perfectly acceptable tournament. It was totally fine. But that final is amazing. And anybody that says it's not amazing, I kind of question their objectivity. Look, I am no Yo guy. The finals, by the way, was Kosei Fujita versus Yo. I am no fan of Yo. I am not. He's one of my least favorite wrestlers to watch. But god damn it if he didn't play his character to a T. God damn it if that wasn't dramatic ass pro wrestling. God damn it if they didn't work that match smart as hell. The only thing that stopped me from giving it 5 fucking stars was the very finish where Kosei Fujita hits his finisher. I can't remember what it's called. And it looks kind of weak. It looks kind of weak, but other than that, like, they did everything perfectly. Even down to Yo being the goofball that he is, and doing the other finishers and moves from people from Chaos. I thought all that was genius, man, because Chaos is dead. And now this dude, who is a certified lunatic, is also trying to find his identity. Look, I have no ties to him as a character, but to say he wasn't incredible here is kind of hating. You know what I mean? I just, because I was listening to the Voices of Wrestling, and, you know, look, I'm not telling everybody, like, let me rephrase that. No one is inclined to love this match, right? No one, like, we're all, you know, we all have our own opinions. You know what I mean? It is what it is. We all consume things different ways. But I think if you review wrestling, right? If you review pro wrestling, or you talk about pro wrestling in a critical capacity, we're all fans to begin with, 100%. But I think that there's also a line where you have to separate what you are as a fan and talk about what fucking worked. You know what I mean? Like, truthfully, I don't really enjoy watching the WWE at all, as y'all motherfuckers know. I don't really like talking about it on Blue Moon. But how many times have you guys heard me say, look, man, it worked for them people. Look, man, it worked. Look, man. And, like, because it does, and I know they stated, oh, their crowd was into it and stuff like that, but they were really underselling how much this crowd was into this match. This crowd was nuclear, bro. There wasn't like that point where, like, they're like, oh, they're quiet. You know what I mean? No, these motherfuckers was into it from the bell. It felt like 2017 New Japan. And I really think, like, when I heard that review, I was like, these motherfuckers are really selling short how special this felt. You know what I mean? And it's Yo. I understand, because it's Yo, you don't want to do that. But we have to be fair. And then what are we? You know what I mean? What are we if we're not fair? I thought these motherfuckers performed incredibly. I see it with Kosei Fujita. I think that he's too small to ever be heavyweight ace guy. Too small. But, like, way too small. But Junior Ace, actual draw in the junior division, somebody that the fans connect to, because mission accomplished. If you watch that final, mission accomplished. You know what I mean? I don't know how many people were there, but that crowd was losing his shit, man. Like, they two guys, well, I know one for sure was fucking made by this tournament. The other one, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, it's Yo. It's Yo. But he was great. He was fucking amazing here. And that match is amazing. It is an amazing, it's not like, I think it was really good. No, motherfucker. That match is amazing. And because it's Yo, I guess it's hard to do that, huh? I'll see y'all on Blue Moon.